thanks very much for coming. Before I start, I just want to get a sense of the attendees. So, how many people here have heard of DarkFi? Okay, it's like maybe half. So I just want to say, to start off, that I won't be talking about DarkFi much, but if you're interested in that and you want to learn more, I recommend that you stay for the talk that's directly after this, where my colleague Amir will talk and explain everything about DarkFi. But today I'm going to talk about Lunarpunk. Who here has heard of that term before? Okay, for those that don't know what it is, if you know what cypherpunk is and solarpunk, then you're halfway to understanding what Lunarpunk is. One way of describing Lunarpunk is as a synthesis of cypherpunk and solarpunk, which combines aspects of both imaginaries to create a new version which supersedes both. But if you don't know what cypherpunk or solarpunk are, the best way to understand Lunarpunk is as a sci-fi imaginary that's oriented around utopian anonymity. So what does that mean? Utopian anonymity is the perspective or conviction that anonymity is something very good for society, and that it could actually lead to a emergence of new kinds of civilizations. The basic idea is that surveillance and a society based on data extraction is a kind of dead, controlled world where society can't progress. Through anonymity, we allow different kinds of societies and new forms of civilizations to emerge. So that's why Lunarpunk sees itself as a kind of utopian anonymity. And tools like DarkFi play a role in bringing this utopia about. But the goal of this presentation is not to talk about that. In fact, this presentation has 3 goals. So firstly, I'm going to try to define Lunarpunk not by through these words and definitions, but actually by showing you a potential future. So this talk is a sci-fi with sci-fi artworks that is supposed to kind of speculate on one possible chain of events and to define Lunarpunk concretely by example. Secondly, I want to clear up some misconceptions. So when I first wrote about Lunarpunk, that was back in 2021, there was later an animation made of it. If you Google Lunarpunk and the dark side of the cycle, you can find the video. And the kind of mistake that I made at the time was that I defined Lunarpunk in contrast to solarpunk. Solarpunk was something related to transparency and surveillance by virtue of its transparency, whereas Lunarpunk was positioned in contrast to that as a pro-anonymity perspective. The issue with this framing is that it made people believe that Lunarpunk was some kind of negative or some kind of shadow of solarpunk, that it was rooted in negativity and skepticism, whereas solarpunk was something optimistic and positive. So that's a misconception, and I want to show you through these images why Lunarpunk sees itself more as a utopian perspective. So it's really a story about how can these anonymous tools lead to a world that is better than the world today. So it's an uplifting future. And one of the reasons why Lunarpunk is often seen as a negative is because in the Lunarpunk imaginary, there's an idea that the state, the nation-state paradigm is overcome. For some people, that idea is suggestive of chaos. So they find it scary and they find it something bad. For Lunarpunks, that's a really good thing. So it's the beginning of a new age. It's something uplifting and optimistic. So I want to show you that in the coming talk. Finally, the goal of this presentation is to provide a new image of the future. So we believe that by creating images of the future and by providing sci-fi speculative imagination about where the future could go, we actually make those new kinds of futures more likely. So by providing these kind of images, we compel the future in some ways to move in that direction. What I'm talking about here is a strange aspect of science fiction that you see in many sci-fis, such as William Gibson, cyberpunk, and all kinds of science fictions, where the sci-fi actually precedes, it anticipates the future. So sci-fi has this amazing ability to bring about new kinds of futures and imaginaries. So we believe that one way to reorient the future away from surveillance dystopia is through this effort of speculating on other kinds of possible pathways, and through that speculation, making those pathways more plausible and concrete. Okay, so I'm invoking a Lunarpunk called Porrig Pierce, who was a revolutionary who participated in the 1916 uprising in Ireland. It was a failed revolution, but through its failure, it actually brought about the next revolution, which was a success. So this is something that Porrig Pierce said just before his execution. He said, "We seem to have lost. We have not lost. To refuse to fight would have been to lose. To fight is to win. We have kept faith with the past and handed on a tradition to the future." So I'll let you kind of reflect on that. I just wanted to bring that up. I think it's very interesting because sometimes when it comes to the fight for privacy, people become very, very resigned. But in fact, that it's through our efforts, and even when we seem to have failed, we are in fact winning through the very act of defying the surveillance paradigm. Okay, so now we're going into the sci-fi. Sorry for the extended introduction. We begin at the beginning, 12,000 years ago, in the Neolithic Revolution. In those early days, there were many different kinds of civilizations that coexisted. On this timeline, we see the emergence of a particular kind of civilization, the rise of cities and ancient Mesopotamia, the emergence of the nation-state paradigm 5,000 years ago. So throughout history, there have been many different kinds of civilizations that have competed for dominance. So in human history, there's a kind of a rise and fall of different competing civilizational formats. And in this kind of 500-year interval, a particular form of civilization will define that paradigm. So the last 500 years have been the time of the modern nation-state era. But as we move into the millennium, we're coming into a new paradigm, which is different to what became before us 500 years ago, in the past 500 years. So this is the Y2K paradigm shift that we're currently a part of. And essentially, what we're seeing is this form of civilization that has emerged and became the dominant form of society in the past 500 years is breaking down, and a new kind of civilization is assembling itself. Peer-to-peer technology, anonymity, cryptocurrency all play a role in the disintermediation of the nation-state and the emergence of something new. We believe that the next 500 years will be a kind of new dark age. That sounds scary, but it's actually not. It's actually a really good thing. So what does it mean? The new dark age will be a time of spiritual growth and development. It will be a time of re-decentralization, where we will see a global reconfiguration of power, and the existing nation states will decline, and something new will be born of that. So it's a fertile age where the new kind of society is taking root. So this is the projection toward the next 10,000 years of human history. So the basic contention is we're entering, with the Y2K paradigm shift, we've entered a kind of new dark age. This is a period of around 500 years where we experience a time of great spiritual growth. The spiritual development that we are set to undergo in the next 500 years will lead to a new renaissance. So that next phase, 1,000 years in the future, will be a synergy of the 500 years of spiritual development with the new technological capacities that will come about as a result of that shift. So the goal in the next few slides is to sketch out like one possible timeline of events that could lead to this phenomena. And it's a quick sketch, but I hope it's going to excite you and show you the possibilities. As you can see here, once we go through this Renaissance period, we enter kind of a neo-Roman cosmic expansion where like life and human life, animal, plant life expands to the cosmos, eventually ending in a great human speciation event where we'll see a enormous diversity and plurality of different kinds of society, but also different kinds of post-humans that have evolved to different planetary conditions. Okay, so this is, if you can see the date there in the future, it's 2033, so it's the near future. Here in this image, you can see Lunarpunk fighters. They're in a 3D weapons production facility. So this is a little snapshot of, the coming storm, where global power begins to break up, and organized factions start to assemble and become the seeds of the new paradigm. So you can see that there's like forests creeping in. They represent the reforestation of society. 3D printed weaponry is going to be a major defining force in this disintermediation of state power. Anonymity in cryptocurrency is also playing a big role. At the same time, we will see the rise of regional identities and network states. So these kind of new crypto-enabled network exit civilizations. So I think we're going to see both things at the same time. So the regional identities are pre-existing, in some cases like indigenous identities that have a strong sense of rooted locality to a place. So you might have the re-emergence of some of these ethnic groups that have been misplaced by the nation state or silenced by the nation state. So they're going to rise up and they're going to start to assert autonomy within the next 100 years. At the same time, the network states are going to rise, so we're going to have both things happening simultaneously. The network state is something more cosmopolitan, so you'll see a lot of different ethnicities coming together around technology, around space exploration, around longevity, and other kinds of like guiding topics. So you're going to have both of these forms. This is going to eat away, wear away at the nation-state paradigm, and also provide the seeds of the next phase. So now we've skipped a little bit further into the future. As you can see, we're like over 200 years into the future. So there are a series of events that happen. One is, this image kind of indicates the changing spiritual landscape. So we can see here kind of robed, neo-Druidic female figures on an island, Skellig Michael. For those that know it, it's an island that was home to monks within the previous Dark Ages. In the new Dark Ages, it becomes home to a new spiritual order that holds nature as sacred, but sees science and technology as a way of connecting with nature, kind of a sacred act of worship and reverence. And so in this new monastic order, we start to see technologies emerging that more closely resemble organic life. And this particular monastic order is very interested in quantum biology, but also in biology in general, genetic research. So you can see some of the life forms that they've engineered in the corner of the screen. So as they get deeper into this quantum research, they begin to uncover new forms of weaponry. I mention this because I don't want to give the impression that the utopian future we're describing is one where there's no conflict of any kind. In fact, we expect that it'll be more the case that there will be new sovereign communities, and those communities are enabled to be sovereign because they're able to back up their sovereignty with weapons. That doesn't mean it's going to be necessarily a state of war all the time. You know, it's just a case of a kind of armed neutrality. So it's like there are new monastic orders, new spiritual orders. There is societal speciation at the level of culture, like many different societies existing side by side. They're autonomous, and that autonomy is backed up with weapons. Okay, so at some point in this timeline, there is the discovery of alien life. That is like a huge event for humanity, in the same way as the Copernican revolution like recentered man from the cosmos, and you know, was it like a shock that changed the trajectory of civilization. In the same way, the discovery of alien life will shock humanity and force a new perspective upon us. I say here, like, there's another idea, which is like maybe we're going to discover something like evidence of an old civilization on Mars. So there's theories about this, that actually Mars was home to a giant nuclear explosion. There's evidence in the minerals. So people are like, maybe there was an advanced civilization that blew itself up with nuclear. The discovery of something like this on Mars, along with alien life, could bring about a new perspective that is, you know, begins to revere nature and life as something fragile and special, and that should be protected. So the idea is like feeding into this new spiritual perspective that has emerged in the Neo-Dark Ages. You have this like this new reverence for life, because you have a cosmic perspective which shows, you know, the kind of devastation of nuclear war on Mars. That's just one scenario. Okay, so back on Earth, we've seen the results of this new spirituality that has emerged. Many different civilizations. This one is a Neo-Celtic civilization that loves nature and that has been reviving extinct species. So they've started all this research into biology, and quantum has like borne fruits. So they have this whole new hyper biodiverse ecology of extinct plants and animals that have started to cohabit with the living. So this is happening, and through that research, by amassing all this new genetic knowledge of the extinct plants and species, we actually make a series of breakthroughs in our understanding of nature and biology. So this is, you know, immensely useful, and it leads to an evolution in plant-animal-human communication. So again, we're nurturing this deep reverence for nature through this deepened relationship to the plants and animals that we cohabitate with via this like improved communication. Okay, so I put this here. This is just a quick sketch to show that at this moment of history, we're in like 2500 to 2800. We're in the Neo-Roman era, like just after the Neo-Dark Age. So this is a time where, you know, the political structure of the world has been basically decomposed into more older regional identities and the newer network state type exit civilizations that are more cosmopolitan. So you have these things side by side, and they have strong trade routes and connections. So they're not isolated. They're collaborative, and it's possible to exchange ideas and materials through this like global confederate system that has like healthy trade routes. I emphasize that because there's a misconception that you can't have like global cooperation at the level of trade and economy without nation states. That's a misconception. We've been doing it for like thousands of years. So I'm running out of time, but I'm going to like fly through these. These network states, they were focused on the space exploration. So they've built these centers in the Atlantic, which are like launch pads where they've been, they're able to explore like the space. So, you know, that's the benefit of those network states. Then we see the first signs of successful terraforming experimentation on Mars, which is the introduction of these like new genetically modified mosses that have been discovered by the civilization that's really into reviving extinct life. So terraforming on Mars is starting to go well. Eventually we move the humans and the animals to Mars. In the year 3740, we begin to see the first signs of speciation. So the humans and the animals and the plants that have migrated there are already starting to adapt to the low sunlight and to the thinner atmosphere that they experience on Mars. You know, finally, I had to put the moon in there because it's Lunarpunk after all. The terraforming has also been adapted to the lunar surface. So we're really spreading life throughout the cosmos. Finally, you know, 10,000 years into the future, humans have expanded into exoplanets. This is the point where we start to see the, you know, the extremes forms of speciation, where humans and animals begin to diverge rapidly. And, you know, along with this hyper diversity at the level of society. So that's a quick sketch of what the Lunarpunk future could look like, or one possible future. A huge thank you to ZK Armour, who made all of these artworks. You know, he worked really hard on them, and they're so beautiful. So thanks so much to him. He does all the art for all of DarkFi. And yeah, thanks very much for coming to the talk, and I'll pass on to Amir, who's coming after me. Thank you.
That was a great presentation, Rose. And I actually made a big mistake at the beginning of this by not introducing you first and saying that Rose can actually basically bench press her own weight. Now, if you can hang on just for 1 minute here, we've got a couple of audience Q&As. So there's a pretty big question here that's upvoted, and that's, why is DarkFi an alternative L1 when it could instead be a properly private Ethereum L2? Its weaker security scares me. Do you have any takes on that, or should we wait until the next?
I'm happy to answer that. So I'm going to start with the second thing, which is about the security. The plan with DarkFi is to do a merge mine with Monero, which basically means we're bootstrapping off the security of the Monero blockchain. So I don't see it as being scary or like weak security or anything like that. That's the first thing. Second thing is, why are we in Alt L1? The main reason is our focus is on anonymity, privacy. So we spent all of our development effort on that, and we weren't particularly opinionated on which, like, are we in L2, do we use IBC or any of that? That's not our focus. We know that there are many projects who are working on decentralized, trustless L2s, IBC, other kinds of like trustless bridging. So we're just letting those projects work out those very difficult problems for us while we focus on the ZK ecosystem. And then whenever, like, and please, if you have ideas on this, please talk to me. As soon as there are available trustless bridging, like trustless L2s, decentralized L2s, and or IBC that can work with the UTXO chains, you know, we'll adopt them. We're not fixated on being in L1. We'd happily, you know, we want other blockchains to connect. We want to connect to them. So we're open to it. Come talk to me if you have ideas.
And I think we have time for one last question. Does DarkFi see AI as a friend or foe to the mission? And it also ties into that last question you see here, where how do you foresee the rise of machine intelligence in the Lunarpunk timeline?
I see AI as a kind of like demon that has like grown off of the surveillance and the collection of like the mass data harvesting. So it is this kind of like scary evil demon that is like based, like grown on surveillance, like fed on our data. But that's not to say that, you know, it can't also help us in interesting ways. For example, maybe you guys know Dr. Nick. He's a person who's very optimistic about the AI. So like if you talk with him, he'll give all kinds of ways in which the AI can benefit societies. So, you know, my main issue with the AI is like its origin, like, but I'm not saying that it can't be used for good stuff. And maybe in the Lunarpunk timeline, it helps with these new experimentation into like hyper biodiversity and space exploration. Maybe AI plays a role in that. Maybe it plays a role in the human-animal communication. So, you know, there's plenty of potential there. And I think it's probably one of those things that forces the coming like shift toward a new civilization. It's like one of those like transformative technologies that's going to reconfigure the new paradigm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Rose is going to be